Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for attending today's HEERF presentation. Some of the goals for this morning are to provide an overview of HEERF and give everyone an update about our spending thus far. And at the end of this presentation, we'll take questions. So right now we have it so that any of your questions get sent straight to a host, and we'll cover those at the end. Real quick,
Rudy, hold on. You somehow muted yourself.
Okay. Morning, everyone. Thanks for attending today's HEERF presentation. Some of the goals for this morning are to provide an overview of HEERF and give everyone an update about our spending thus far. At the end of the presentation, we'll take some questions. So feel free during the presentation to send some questions through chat. It'll be sent directly to the host, and we'll get to those at the end of the presentation. Just as introductions, Rudy Hill, controller for SBCC. We've got Lindsay as well on the call here, and assessor perspectives as well, and we have several members of BRAC as well. And I'll open up to anyone that I just mentioned if you want to do a shout out right up. So, okay, so we'll get started here. Okay, so overview of HEERF. So what is HEERF? HEERF is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. We throw that acronym around, and here's the long of it, which is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. So take a look here at this kind of a warm up, right, for what we're going to go through in these next few slides. I think that this cartoon really captures the fact that as we were going into the pandemic, right, there was all of this uncertainty about costs and expenses, and really HEERF helped to offer an opportunity to mitigate that impact. So what is HEERF, right? I think that some folks know, some don't. So thought I'd use this opportunity to give an overview of HEERF. So as you can see here, it's a funding that was provided to mitigate this uncertainty, right? This wave coming in of uncertainty of financial consequences of the pandemic, right? Loss of revenue, additional expenses for PPE, and other impacts to all the students and parents, faculty, and just the whole district, district wide. So these funds were giving out in 3 tranches, right? So down below, I want to take a few minutes to go through this table here. So we've got up on top, we've got HEERF 1, HEERF 2, and HEERF 3. So on March 27th, 2020, the district was awarded about almost $6.2 million, and those are distributed in 3 groups. So almost 2.9 was for institutional purposes. About almost 400,000 was for minority serving institutions, and 2.9 was for students. On the HEERF 2, that award was on December 27th, 2020. And so institutional 8.9, minority serving institutions almost 700,000, and for students 2.9. And for HEERF 3, that was on March 11th, 2021. For the institutional portion, the district received 10 million. Minority serving institutional part was for about 1.1, and students, the student portion was approximately 10.6 million. Okay, so for overall, for all of these this HEERF funding, the total that the district has at disposal to mitigate, again, the impact of the pandemic is roughly 40.5 million. Okay, and I think this chart again hopefully allows you to see how this funding happened over this past, these past year and a half, and also when it was awarded to the district. Also, I think it's important to know when you look at this table that really the funding is in 3 buckets, right? And some would argue it's really 2 buckets. It's the institutional part. But that's important to know because these buckets really have rules about how we can use those funds. Now, please note below that these funds have to be spent by a certain date. So what I've included down below in the note section is that the deadline is 1 year from the date of the last award, when that was given to us, or when we actually received the official announcement of that. So we received our letter on May 11th. And so we have about a year from that point, roughly. Now, I think we're going to be able to get all of this spent by then. We do have just a lot of needs, right? The impact of the pandemic, there's a big impact to the district. So now we'll go on to the next slide here. Okay, so obviously when anyone gives you like funds from the federal government, right, they have requirements and parameters for this spending. So here's a list. There's 2 slides worth of requirements. I'll kind of let you go through this to give you about a minute or so to kind of go through, but I want to highlight a couple of things that's more important to how we've been using the funds here at the district. The first one, we've been able to use that a lot, these funds, to provide emergency financial aid grants to students. We have also been able to provide additional funding to offset the impact, other impacts to students. For example, in terms of technology hardware, so that 4th one on this list here, most people have seen that through the district providing Chromebooks to students, making technology more available to students as they had to go into a distance portion. Okay, obviously there's a lot of students who didn't have access as they did in the past to the internet. So providing hotspots was a way that the district was able to use funds to support students in their success. Okay. Again, continue on with some more requirements, like where we're allowed to spend money. That second one where we spent quite a bit, purchasing, leasing, renting additional instructional equipment, right? This is the stuff where we've had to configure some classrooms to be more hybrid, get more equipment to really provide an online format during this pandemic. Okay, the third one is also another area where I'd say the bulk of the institutional part of the funding has allowed us to recoup some of the lost revenue. So if you go back, kind of think back to that picture where the big wave was hitting the numbers on that graph, you'll see that kind of picture that was a big concern for the district. Like, are we going to have enough funds to make it through? We're going to be losing funds here, right? We have to shut down certain services. And so the third bullet point there has been a mechanism for the district to recoup lost revenue through funds provided for the institutional portion of HEERF. And let's see, and then there's always the catch-all for other. And again, the theme has to be, right, from a reporting perspective, back to Department of Education, is that we use these funds to mitigate the impact of COVID. So that's always the overarching theme, right, of the spending requirements. Okay, so that folks have an opportunity to kind of see where this information comes from. On this slide here, I provided a couple of links where you can go to get more information here. And I will post this slide out on the fiscal services website, which I'll provide the link here in a few slides. But what I wanted to show you real quickly here is this link to HEERF award information. So the Department of Education, they have on their site a summary of what this funding is for, each funding tranche of 1, 2, and 3. So for those who want to get more information, this is a great site to go to. On this site here, the link to a spending dashboard, this link allows you to go into the part that's specific to the district. And it shows here that we have been awarded 40.5 million. And over to the right here in this snapshot here shows what we have reported to Department of Education, what we've spent to date. So accountability, reporting, all of that is essential for the management of these funds. Okay, so I just want to provide these quick links to everyone. Okay, so all of this is to get to the meat of it, right? Which is HEERF spending. Okay, what have we done with these funds thus far? Okay, so thought I'd provide a little quick morning humor. You know, as you see here, you got an accountant, someone in fiscal services. You know, here's where we ran out of purchase orders. Okay, so I picked this one on a weekend, thinking it'd be funny. It probably was maybe funnier to me and anyone in fiscal services. But the idea here is to really convey this idea that, you know, one thing is to get the funds, 40.5 million. Another thing is to actually track these funds, right? It's difficult because there's a lot of needs, and we have reporting requirements back to the Department of Education to make sure that we accomplish what their goal was, which is to help, you know, institutions like us, a district like ours, get through the impact of the pandemic. Okay, so before we get into the actual numbers, I wanted to provide a few quick links. These are links on our website. So the HEERF requirement reporting. So one of the things for Department of Education is we are required to provide to the community how we've been spending the money. So this would be that first snapshot I showed you, where it showed 40.5 million, and it showed that we spent a little over 11 million. We have to report that to the public, showing where the funds have been used thus far on a quarterly basis. So this is a link to that site on our website. As far as additional information, fiscal services, we have provided a page where we are providing information such as funding decisions for HEERF 1, 2, and 3, general HEERF information, budgeting and spending reports. As we put these together, we're going to show that out to the community. But the overall theme is that if you want to find out about HEERF, you can go to one of these areas to get more information about it. Okay, rather than go through, you know, the Department of Education and then try to drill down to our district, you can go here as well. So I'll also provide those links. I think those links are already there for the Department of Education. I showed you in the previous slide, as well as information on our awarded dollars and what we spent so far. All those links should be there. If not, they will be here at the end of the day. And then the last link I wanted to share with everyone is accounting and purchasing help desk. So this is a great resource, I think, for the district. Anytime you have a question about HEERF, if you've been awarded dollars for a proposal, you have questions about the coding, about the budgeting, this is a great place to go. If you have any questions about HEERF in general, you know, please you visit the help desk. We normally have several accountants ready to help answer those questions, and you don't need to make an appointment. Just come to the help desk, ask a question, and we'll we'll do our best to get you an answer as soon as possible, hopefully during that visit. Okay, so for this student portion section here, I'm going to go through some of the numbers, and Maureen is going to jump on here and also give some more context to these numbers as far as student numbers. Okay, but if you remember back to the first slide, we had, like I said, 3 tranches of HEERF funding: HEERF 1, HEERF 2, and HEERF 3. And look kind of in your mind, referring back to that table, we know that the funding for HEERF 1 was 2.9. The funding for HEERF 2 was same, 2.9, and for HEERF 3 was 10.6. Now, the nice part about the way that HEERF was awarded is that the institution part was pretty big as well. And if you remember back to the requirements, the institutional portion has a mechanism to award even more dollars towards offsetting the impact, the adverse impact of students. And that's actually what we've been able to do. So in HEERF 1, about 300,000 of funds were transferred from the institutional portion over to the students in HEERF 1. And for HEERF 2, about the same amount was also transferred in. As you can see here in the note, transfers in. And it's all been spent, so which is great. Now there is a small portion here for HEERF 2, roughly 90,000 that we'll spend in the next few months here, but it's all been designated to help students in their success. Now, as far as student, how many students we've helped, Maureen, do you have any of that information that you're able to share?
Yes, thank you, Rudy. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to let you know a little bit more also about the process that we went through so that you are aware of how we did all of this as quickly as we did. When the pandemic first hit and we first received HEERF money, we pulled a community together of administrators and got an application out and money in the hands of students within 30 days of being notified. We were one of the first in our region to be able to get HEERF dollars in the hands of students. And that was on top of what the foundation had been able to give, which was HEERF dollars in about 2 weeks. Not HEERF dollars, their own money, within about 2 weeks of the pandemic first happening. In the spring of 20, we did award over 2,000 students $1.9 million. In the fall, we awarded an additional 1,800 students about $1 million. And then last spring, we had about 2,500 students that received 2.7 million. So if you add all those together, it gets to Rudy's total expenses there in the middle. We had awarded about $3.86 million in direct aid to students. It did not matter if they were documented, undocumented, international. We did award both credit and non-credit students alike. And we have upcoming $10 million that we'll be awarding for this fiscal year. We are in the first awarding process right now. I checked and we have over 2,000 students who have already submitted an application for fall 21 HEERF grants. We are expecting to provide between 4 and 5 million out of this awarding. And then we will open it up again in the spring to do a spring awarding in HEERF. I also wanted to let you know that during the summer, we did emergency grants as well. We spent a little bit of HEERF money on our international students, but we had received some state restricted dollars, which we were able to award to residents of California, and spent another 1.5 million during that summer. So the process that everybody has to go through is about 6 questions, verifying who they are and how they've been impacted by COVID. Takes less than 5 minutes to fill out, and then we have their checks go directly to them. Does not matter if they have a balance owed to the college. It skips right over that so that it is truly direct funds into the hands of our students. To date, we do have duplicates, and I can't give you an unduplicated amount, but we've awarded more than 6,000 grants in the time when we first started HEERF until now. I hope that wasn't too fast.
Okay, great. Thanks, Maureen, for giving more context about these, right? I like how you really brought that student element here, right? A lot of times from the fiscal services side, we just see numbers and we're like, great, we go through the funds really fast, we record it, but we don't get the proper context that you've now provided, which is how many students have been helped and will be helped with these funds. So thank you so much for sharing that.
We have a dedicated CARES email address. And when the awards first went out, I was amazed at all of the thank yous that people gave us for getting them out quickly, how it meant the difference between eating and not eating, being evicted or not being evicted. So when you're working with students on one-on-one rather than on the accounting side, you can really see how important this money was to them.
Yeah, and it sounds, Maureen, like you have a good sense that how we've done again versus other districts, right? It sounds like we've been really proactive and sort of ahead of the curve. Is that right?
I think we were at first, but everybody caught up pretty quickly. Districts have been doing it differently. I know at Allen Hancock, when I spoke with my counterpart there, that they did everybody gets a little bit. And we did an application process. So different districts have been doing it a little differently, but I believe everybody's caught up now.
Yeah, and it's kind of been my sense over these past several months, obviously I'm relatively new, but since day one, it seems like we couldn't get the money fast enough out to students. I feel like there was been a sense of urgency, which is great to know that. So again, thank you, Maureen. Appreciate you and the work that your group has been doing to get these funds out.
Great.
And obviously, I think the commitment of dollars, right, coming over from the institutional part shows also the district's commitment to not just distribute what's been a portion, but even more. And so hopefully that's been helpful as well.
We've learned a lot through this process as well. For example, we did have the credit and non-credit students applying in separate applications, but that became very confusing and they would apply in both places or they didn't know where to apply. So in the fall 21 awarding, we've made one application and we'll separate the non-credit from the credit students on our end, thus making it easier for the students to apply. They don't have to identify where they come from. We will figure it out on the other end. So we're learning a lot as well. Great.
Well, thanks, Maureen. And when we get to the end for questions, if you have some time, we would love to see. But if anyone has any questions for you, in this area, we much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So
Hey, Rudy, if you don't mind, I'm just going to a time check. I'm just letting you know you only have 30 minutes left. So you want to get slides and allow time for questions.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so the gist of this quick little cartoon is to say that on the student part is easy to address because it's helping students. On the institutional part, we have to make sure that everything that we spend is according to the requirements. That's the idea here. Okay, so real quick note here, everything you see in blue, I've just wanted to highlight as lost revenue for those that are kind of tabulating costs, just keep that in mind. And then the red is just transfers in or transfers out. So for HEERF 1, we had the institutional part and the MSI part, as you see up here. We have roughly about 400,000 of lost revenue that for the institutional part and almost 400,000 for the MSI part that we were able to record. And we transferred out 300,000+ out to the student portion. The rest of the costs that you see here were the HEERF one. It was all the needs that we had, right? Technology needs, get Chromebooks out, PPE, get the campus safe, right? As well as other costs, and mainly another costs are really the personnel costs to make this happen, as well as things like HEPA air purifier. Okay, that we separate that out to show how much has been spent on that. Although that is part of equipment and campus safety, we wanted to show that there. Okay, and as you can tell, by the end of 2021, we fully expended these funds. For HEERF 2, like we see up here how much has been funded. This could be a little bit confusing, but I want to quickly highlight that everything in blue, again, is lost revenue for those that are tabulating that, and everything in red is transfers out. So for HEERF 2, we got 8.9 million. We spent it in these buckets: technology, instructional equipment and software, etc. Okay, and some other. Now, the 6.1 million of lost revenues for unrestricted general, if you trace these funds out, we move these funds over to UGF, or some may already know this fund, 11,002. It's the COVID mitigation fund. And these lost revenues came from international tuition, out-of-state tuition, etc. And these funds were designated to fund many proposals, roughly $4.6 million worth of proposals. And those expenses have resulted in these buckets of expenditures. So, for example, equipment and software, 700,000, campus safety and operations, about $1 million. But the big ones that we didn't anticipate when those funds were allocated was how much it was going to cost for the $100 vaccination. Now, that was a great program. We were able to serve almost 8,200 students. That's roughly what it cost us then. We've also been able to have funds available for hotspots, and also we're able to fund the check-in tables. Now, based on how we got to the end of the year and we saw that we had available funds, as you see a note here, we were able to transfer some, about 300, see the note down here, 340,000 of expenses, get those funded directly out of the HEERF 2 institution. We had some funds left over and we were able to move those costs over. So what does that mean? That means we have more funds available for other, for other initiatives, other proposals that we still would like to fund. So that gives us about $300,000 in this bucket. And for the MSI portion, we are still determining what the needs are, and that leaves it with about 670,000. Okay, moving on to the next one, HEERF 3. HEERF 3, we have about 11.1 million awarded. We're anticipating about 6 million of lost revenues related to the UGF, about 2 million there for restricted funds. And we know that we've been able to fund to date $601,000 worth of proposals that BRAC looked at and ranked. And our goal is to have more funds available as we see opportunities to fund these additional projects. To date, we anticipate that we'll spend about almost 1.3 million on $40 a day, $40 a day initiative, so the return to campus. And we're estimating about $250,000 total of spending for the $2,500 incentive. Okay, that leaves us just a little bit left in there. As far as the MSI portion, that's to be determined what the needs are, but we have here about 1.1 million. So when you add that up, it's about 2.1 million of available funds. But what I want to highlight here, right, we have competing interests, right? We have this $40 a day could go higher. We may have other things around the horizon. So, and we also really want to fund more of the ranked projects that BRAC looked at. So we have a lot of competing interests, and we have a lot of needs. So the goal is to be prudent with these funds and use them. And fiscal services is here to help manage that process. Okay, I think we're on to almost the last slide here, which is This right here summarizes the lost revenues. There's a lot of questions about lost revenues, and it's easy to show a number. So when you look back at the previous slides here, and during the question portion of this presentation, we can go back to that. But everything in blue adds up to these numbers. So when we look at the lost revenue for 1920 and 2021 for the restricted portions, this is what we're able to claim lost revenues to and send these funds to these, send the monies to these funds here. Okay. I'll give you a few seconds here, kind of quickly digest that. And one thing I want to highlight here is, as we calculated those funds, right, we were able to draw across the allocation of funds. So it's not necessarily a 1-for-1. We know that this is about 2.6 million, and that 2.6 million came out of the monies awarded to HEERF 1 and 2. All right, so the idea behind this quick slide here is just to show that you know, the numbers are the numbers come across as need comes across, right? And we have a finite amount of dollars, and we're doing the best we can to allocate those to the right buckets for reporting purposes. And we're also trying to meet all the needs possible, but these are finite dollars, and that's kind of the idea here. Okay. All right, so now we get into the, I guess, kind of maybe the more exciting part about the presentation, questions. So I'll open it up here to any questions. If there's someone in chat, you know, we'll get to those as well. So do we have anyone that has a quick question? Oh, okay, Cornelia. Okay, see. Okay.
Get yourself, Cornelia.
Quick question. Can you please
Yes.
elaborate what the $2,500 incentive is, please?
Want me to?
So, yeah, go ahead, Lindsay.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah.
So very similar to the $40 a day incentive that was provided to all bargaining units, the CSEA negotiated a retroactive pay that could be up to $2,500 for CSEA employees that had been on campus from September of 2020 through June of 2021. So it covered 10 months. So it's $250 a month if those employees were there for the full 10 months, or it was prorated depending on how frequent those employees were on campus during that time period prior to the $40 a day starting.
So that is what was called hero pay?
No, we never titled it.
Oh, I thought so.
I don't know. Maybe someone from CSEA could speak to that if they ever referred to it that way. We were calling it the retroactive pay per
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so this is, I was just confused about the incentive. So it's a retroactive,
Yes.
you know, right? Okay, got it.
Yeah, and I also want to give a lot of thanks to our payroll group, you know, pulling together a process, you know, working to get those dollars out. So just want to, you know, send much, you know, thanks to them, to that group for their efforts. Is there another question out there?
I got another one in the chat that everyone might want to hear.
Okay.
The answer. Someone asked
Yeah.
if the $40 a day will continue into the spring semester. So that has to be negotiated with all of our different bargaining units. And at this point in time, the MOU for the $40 a day does cease at the end of this calendar year. But the negotiations will continue for spring. So I don't know the answer to that.
Any other questions out there? I'm looking for any raised hands. If there's, go ahead, please.
Sorry, could I see the previous slides again, please?
Yes.
Go one back, two back.
Okay, tell me when to stop.
I believe here. Let me have a look again.
Okay.
And then, okay, so 2021 actuals on the very top where we recovered lost revenue, the 6.1 million. So they were used about 1.4 million to offset our deficit. There
Let me, can I go back?
Yeah.
So you want to focus on the 6.1? Okay. Give me
I
one
would like
second.
to focus on what this money was used for
Yes.
last year and what we are using it for this year.
Okay, so here's a 6.1 million. Okay. So we know that as of 2021, we had, well, if we go back several slides, that's what this is, you know, the counting of this is onerous at times. But the 6.1 million was originally slotted to cover about 4.6 million of expenses in these various categories. And we anticipated having about, I think to your point, Cornelia, you remember about what was the number you remember? 1.4?
1.4.
Yeah, 1.4. That's what we anticipated. Here's what actually happened. As we got to the end of 2021, we had accumulated about 340,000 of expenses, and we had a little bit of availability in HEERF 2 that had not been allocated out to cover those expenses, which basically frees up this column here, right? So there's nothing in 2021 going against these funds, but we still have for 21, 22, roughly, we'll say 4.2 million of proposals that were approved for funding, and that's being spent in 21, 22. Now that eats up about, right? That eats up about 4.2. So that leaves you, let's say I'm just rounding here, 1.8 or so dollars, and you're thinking about, right, the deficit. Here's a part that's fluid about our situation with the pandemic. We needed to up the amount of expenditures for the COVID response team, right? We also decided district-wide that there was a need to get students vaccinated, get the campus ready to get it safe, right, for a return to campus. Well, that's dollars that needed to be used for that. So when you start thinking about that 1.4 to 1.8 million that we thought we'd have, now you start to use up some of those funds here. And the good part is that we had the funds to do that, right? We had.
Oh, sorry, I apologize. I didn't.
No, go ahead, please.
Interrupt you, Rudy. The 1.4 I had in my mind was the projected deficit for the last year. And it is my understanding that we used some of that. I'm just trying to.
Oh yeah, no, I think if and I know what you're talking about, because we also we anticipated it down here. We had other previous slides where we thought that this number here was going to be a 1.4 that we could use to offset any future deficit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we need to get safety right, here, get the campus ready to, for return to campus, right? So we did the $100. We didn't anticipate that, so it's about 800,000. We need hotspots. Okay. We also need the check-in tables. So as you start to add up those dollars, right, it starts to eat away at that. Now, from a budget perspective, what is helping us for 21, 22 is that we are, let me go here real quick. We are in the budget, we have these lost revenues for 21, 22.
These are 21, 22 lost revenues offsets.
From this bucket, yes, correct. This is in the budget that we're using these funds. If you look at the budget, right, if you look at the budget and how we looked at for 2021, we have 6.1 million in there, but we also have that offset with a lot of these costs. But these costs, from a timing perspective, didn't happen all in 2021. We roll that over to 21, 22. But it still comes back to your point, right, where we had anticipated months ago that we'd have about 1.4 or so available to offset the deficit going forward, like kind of in the coffers, for lack of a better term. But unfortunately, right, this pandemic has really forced us to rethink what does it mean to keep the campus, our campuses safe, right? And the decision was made that, well, we need to provide this incentive and we need these hotspots. So it's really eating into that. But as far as the 1.4, we're still good for 21, 22. We're still good. And as you can tell, we still have, if you look across all the funds, right, you know, as costs shift down and are able to be covered by HEERF 1 and HEERF 2 funds, you know, like I said, we did 440,000 here. We still have about 2.1 million, right, or so of monies available to take care of any pressing issues that may come forward. You know, if the $40 a month becomes something that's under budgeted, we have funds there to cover that. And we could end up having a little bit of that surplus that we can now use towards the deficit that you're referring to. Does that help, Cornelia, or is there something else maybe I can give more?
No, thank you very much. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so hopefully for the folks listening in that, you know, this is we have to spend with money within the parameters, right, of what the government has told us. And we also at the same time have to, you know, we're shifting dollars to cover, you know, I hate to use that word shifting, right? But we're able to cover dollars as spending is happening. And for example, if in HEERF 2, if in HEERF 2 we didn't spend all the dollars, we can now cover other dollars and other buckets and shift the costs so that we have more available. I wish I had this animated because it showed a lot better. Any other questions out there?
I don't have any on my end in the chat or anything.
Okay. Does let's see, I don't know if anyone else has any more insights into the numbers, maybe something I missed, something that wasn't as clear.
You did great, Rudy. I really appreciate all the detailed information you put together for everyone. I thank BRAC for recommending that we put together this presentation and share it out to everyone. I think this was really helpful, and thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, and I can stay on a little bit longer if you know folks kind of think of some questions. We did say, what do you?
Okay. Should we let people go? And thanks BRAC members for coming. Appreciate all your hard work. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
and
guys.
I'll post this
Have a good-
presentation out there on the fiscal services web page, so it'll be made available.
Thank you.